Good afternoon. It is February 12th, 2025, and it's only about 5 degrees now. I think last time we were here it was 55. So, Director Fisher, you need to improve on that for next meeting. And I'll call this meeting of the Legal and Finance Committee to order. We'll begin with roll call and determination of quorum.
Beaverdorf. Here. Evans. Here. Maher.
Here.
Roseland.
Here.
Stroman.
Here. Thank you. Next will be adoption of the agenda. There's a motion by Evans and a second by Roseland to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Now is the time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. And I see that we have no speaker request form, so I'm going to close general public comment and move on to consent items 1 through 10 and open public comment on consent items 1 through 10. Again, there being no speaker request forms, I'm going to close public comment on consent items 1 through 10 and now ask if any members of the council wish to pull any items on the consent agenda for separate consideration. Yeah.
Number 3.
Okay. Councilman Maher has pulled number 3. There's a motion by Beaverdorf and a second by Evans to approve 1 through 10, except for number 3. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll go to Councilman Kevin Maher on item number 3, which is approved resolution number 2025-016, a resolution of intent to enter into a lease with Ridley USA DBA Hubbard Feeds for property located adjacent to 426 Omaha Street.
Yeah, I have a question probably for Daniel and for Vicky about this item. This appears to be the city land, and is it in any sort of restriction? Is the floodplain or anything there? I guess maybe just a little history of that city property that we've been leasing to the mill for a long time, and just curious if there's any other use for that. I mean, any other use suggested for that property?
Yeah.
Go to Director Ainsley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, for several years the city has been leasing that property, and so this is a resolution that would just actually be setting a public hearing date for next month, I believe, to actually have the hearing for it, and the property is in the floodplain. And so
it can't be built on.
you can't build structures on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Director Fisher.
Just a point of clarification, there is 100-year federally designated floodplain on the property. There are areas, though, that could be developed with a floodplain development permit, but for the most part, it is encumbered with the 100-year floodplain.
So one more question: how does the rental price? How do we come about that? I mean, is it just something that's kind of the market in that area, or?
Director Ainsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The rental price this time, we did try to set it at a higher rate so that it is more closer to market. However, without a doubt, I don't think we're saying that that's exactly market rate, but it is higher than what it previously had been. What really happens with this property, given its limited use and the limited number of adjacent property owners, there's not a lot of properties that can make use of that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Could I just ask Daniel? I mean, I'm just, like Kevin, I'm a little bit concerned that this looks like a 10-year lease, or we're extending it for another 10 years, and What happens if, we decide there is a higher and better use for that other than which is a very minimal amount of rent that we're getting for that property, and because it is on Omaha Street, and it is, things are constantly changing here, so I guess I'd like to see what your thoughts are on that. Is there ever going to be any development there or anything like that, or any other use that we could see?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the time when we were looking at this and when we had asked other departments, there was not another use that was necessarily defined. That being said, though, if, say, in 4 years, 5 years, there was another use that it would be that would be advantageous for the city, I think at that point we would then discuss with the lessee to see about canceling the lease so we could proceed with the other use. It's not that we're looking at permanently selling the property, so we do believe at some point maybe there is some use there, but at the time there really were no ideas about what another potential use might be.
Okay, I see in paragraph 10 that it says that lessor may terminate this lease at any time on or after the fifth
year.
anniversary, provided that gives 6 months' notice. So
Yeah.
I guess if we did decide to get out of it after 5 years would be the first time we could. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go to the city attorney, Joel Landine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any of the land on the north side, I don't know that there will be development. If you look at it, frankly, after the flood, and again, this is before my time, but my understanding is we acquired all of that land so that it wouldn't be developed again. And the only parcel, or one of the only parcels we didn't acquire, was the Hubbard Mill because of the price, but we use a lot of federal money. So I'm guessing a lot of the land along there we can't even sell or develop. I'm assuming, I was trying to pull up the map, but I assume this is adjacent to that, but probably if it wasn't being used by Hubbard, frankly, it would probably be incorporated into the Greenway is my guess. So.
Okay. Thank you. Go to Pat Roseland.
Sure. There you go. Question for Daniel, please. It says here in section 8, it's the leasee previously donated some of $5,000 for funding the Omaha Street beautification program. Is that still in the works? I know that was done like 10 years ago. So where is that money going to now, or is there still a fund there?
Go to Director Ainsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was a previous donation, and so it's not an ongoing contribution. That was, I believe you're right, about 10 years ago that they contributed an additional $5,000 for the project. And so they just wanted to make sure that the council was aware of that and recognize that they did voluntarily contribute an additional $5,000.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, any further discussion? There's a motion by Bieberdorf and a second by Maher to approve item number 3. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to, that brings us to the end of the consent calendar, so we'll go to non-consent items 11 through 14. I'll open public comment on non-consent items 11 through 14, and having no speaker request forms, I'm going to close public comment on the non-consent items. And for item number 11, we'll go to Community Development and Director Fisher. Okay, now, let me just read it in, I guess. Approve resolution number 2025-005, a resolution for amendment number 1 to the project plan for tax increment district number 92, Enon Development for property generally described as being located east of Elkvale Road, north of Homestead Street, and west of Enon Drive. Director Fisher, could you enlighten us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a TIF that council has already acted on. The amendment that's before you is because the classification of the TIF has changed, I may just point out that there's a element within this TIF that does lean heavily into affordable housing. And from a staff perspective, and your previous action, it also includes constructing a portion of Reservoir Road that is outside of the boundary of their project, that they've just worked with the city to include it in the TIF eligible expenses. If not for that component, that would be an expense that would fall on the city itself. To explain more about the new classification, if I could have Mike Dugan, our TIF planner, update you on that.
Certainly, Mr. Dugan.
Thank you and good afternoon. So what this amendment will do, as Director Fisher had noted, it's going to change the TIF classification from affordable housing to local. I just want to give a very quick few slides just on the history of the original approval of this. And then my last slide will be what that entails to the residents of Rapid City that are within the school area district boundary. So this was approved, TID number 292 in housing development was approved in the fall of last year. And it'll be to your far left is the boundary just above the Homestead Street there. Major street plan, Reservoir Road runs directly through the middle of the boundary. So the original approval of this was to include the completion of Reservoir Road to the future intersection of East Anamosa. And that would open up the construction of 156 single-family homes that'll be the developer-owned portion. So the section that is to be developed or owned, the 156 homes, is in the green section right off of Reservoir Road. So 84 of those homes are going to be priced at, they're smaller scaled homes, priced at upwards of $220,000. The remaining 72 single-family homes would be under the first-time home buyers' purchase price, currently set at $385,000. So what changes this from affordable housing to local? So on the other side there of Reservoir Road in the pink is going to be another development that's not the developer controlled, the applicant of this TID. That's controlled by another developer. Those 55 homes will now be priced upwards of $500,000. So that pulls this out of the classification of affordable housing, because by state statute, everything within the TID boundary has to sell at or below the $385,000. So this will complete the Reservoir Road up to this section, the top of the TID boundary. And also what's going to be included is the grading here on the future East Anamosa. So these are the original TID funded costs. That won't change. The total eligible project costs with the financing is a little over $7.8 million. The amortization, this will pay off in 15 years from the original approval. It's estimated to pay off by 2039. One way that could have changed this to make this an affordable housing TIF was to change the boundary, which means you got to dissolve the original TIF and open up a new one, or an application for a new one. The reason why the applicant didn't want to do that is those 55 homes, additional ones, they wanted to capture that increment and to have this one pay off quicker than the 20-year state allowance. So what does that mean, the impact on the Rapid City School District residents? So the school district funding has to be made whole, so that's the general and special ed funds need to be made whole. So instead of an affordable housing TIF where that's made up statewide, this will be made up locally with this classification change. And I reached out to the state, it is difficult to estimate what that is per resident. So this is an estimation for 2024, it would have been 81 cents per $100,000 of value for owner occupied, about $1.52 per 100,000 of value for commercial and industrial. And then future out, estimated valuation for 2031 would be about $3.25 per $100,000 of value for owner occupied. So the question came up in planning commission, I just want to make sure that it's answered in here, is does that impact county residents as well? And it does. The local classification, it does affect city residents and county residents who are within the boundary of the Rapid City School District. And going further with this, a Meade County resident in the Rapid City School District will also have the additional levy. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
I have a quick question, sir.
Sure.
So how far does the school district extend into Meade County? Like, how many, are we talking about a lot of people, or is it just, it's just a northern boundary, I assume?
Yeah, I believe so. I can double check here.
And then I assume Pennington County residents also would be affected even if they're
Yes.
not within the city limits? Okay.
Yes, it does stretch out to the county. I apologize, I should have had that pulled up.
Is all of Rapid City included in county as part of it, or does it sprawl like Sioux Falls? Is all of Rapid City within Pennington County, or does it stretch outside of Pennington County? Like in Sioux Falls, it goes into Lincoln. We don't have the sprawl like they do in Sioux Falls. Okay. I think so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know this isn't great because we can't show it on the screen, but you can see this is the area here, purple.
Okay, so it's just that many lots.
Yeah,
involved.
so it's a little of Somerset and Blackhawk.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Sorry, I can't project on the screen.
That's all right.
Yeah. Oh.
Daryl? Yeah. You want to take, give me a second and then take podium, HDMI.
That's what I was looking for.
Whenever I do that,
Oh, there we go.
So it's the purple.
yeah, it's the purple. So where it's Blackhawk and southern Somerset?
Yes, okay, so it would be the purple, and it
Okay.
stretches up to the Somerset and Blackhawk there.
Okay, thank you. And then is all of Rapid Cities contained within Pennington County, or do we have sprawl outside of? And I'm talking about school district, I'm talking about, now I want to know just about the city limits.
Yeah, so the city limits there would be in yellow. Is
That's
the,
all in Pennington County though.
right,
It's all in
right,
Pennington.
that's
Yeah.
it. Yep.
Okay, Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the council? Motion by Biederdorf and a second by Roseland to approve. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Move on to number 12, introduction and first reading of ordinance 6653, an ordinance to fix clerical errors in section 8.24.300 and 8.24.610 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And, okay, Kinsley's going to address that.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. Kinsley Grope from the City Attorney's Office. So you'll probably remember the recent passage of the ordinance that adopted the 2024 IFC. That was a multi-page document. The publisher found a couple of numerical errors, and so we're just fixing those, that's all.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Motion by Biederdorf and a second by Maher to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Kinsley. Item number 13, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6654, an ordinance amending Rapid City Municipal Code 3.26 regarding the tax increment financing district review process. And I think we'll go to Director Ainsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really want to acknowledge Kinsley's significant work on this item, as well as Mike. They have been working on this for several months, I believe, beginning in October-ish, to review our TIF policy to try to make it more streamlined so we can get through the process quicker. Also to ensure that we are being good stewards of the taxpayers' resources by ensuring that there's a more careful eye, I guess, on the interest rates that the taxpayers are paying. And then also to make sure that the city is able to take advantage of as many infrastructure development projects as possible that coincide with this. And over the next several months, you'll see several TIFs that are going to complete a lot of needed and necessary city infrastructure projects that will be funded through this TIF. And so with that, Mike gave a more detailed presentation, I believe, 2 council meetings ago that went over all of the changes in the TIF policy. That was just acknowledged by the council. And so now what we're bringing forward are the changes that are necessary in the ordinance so that we can effectuate those changes. If the council approves a first and second reading, then we will bring forward the actual final TIF policy revision. So I know that's a bit of a process, but we hope it makes sense. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions from the committee? There's a motion by Biederdorf and a second by Roseland to approve number 13. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Now item 14 is a presentation Grants Division update by Jamie Tennis, Grants Division Manager.
Hello, Jamie Tennis, Grants Division. So we've been operating now for a couple of years, and as standard practice, every year I like to give you guys an update since we were a brand new division to report on what we've accomplished to make sure that you are comfortable with the work that we are doing. So first of all, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our team. There's of course myself, but we also have Katie and Erica who are here, who can stand and wave for a second. So we are now a team of 3, which is phenomenal since we started with just me, but we continue to see success. What we do is just a refresher. A lot of people think it's just grant writing, but truthfully there's so much more that goes into it. That's almost the final product, but research, vetting, finding that happy spot where we can match city priorities with what the priorities of the funder have. To make the magic happen and get the award. Then we've also found, now that we've received several grants, the opportunities to build up our internal capacity for managing those grants. That's partly what has led to bringing Erica onto the team, is that post-award grant management piece and how we can support our various departments. So as a reminder, we aren't the only ones writing grants for the city. The airport has someone that they utilize because those are very technical. And then the police department has a longtime grant writer that they've used who's very successful. Also, from time to time, there are very specialized grants that various departments might do. For example, Public Works, every year they go after the South Dakota Bridge Grant. They've been doing it forever, they got it down, so they handle that one and we don't really play a part. So, what I'm going to share for the next couple of slides are really strictly focused on what the grants division accomplished in the last year. So we submitted 25 grants, requesting over $84 million. We've been awarded $3.7 million thus far, and we still have $22 million pending that we are waiting to hear on, that hopefully we hear anytime between now and the next 6 months, hopefully. So I know return on investment is extremely important. We want to make sure that we are good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. So for every dollar that the city is investing in the grants division, we are bringing in $14 of additional outside revenue funding to support city priorities. Now I'm going to talk about what the grants have been used for, and this does encompass all of the grants, so even the ones that PD does, the airport does, etc. So if we look at community benefits, so what the grants are that we are applying are going to: affordable housing, about 5%, 13% for arts and culture, 41% for economic development, 7% for environment and beautification, 40% for infrastructure, and 31% for safer communities, think fire, ambulance, police department. We've also been working with every single department, and so here's kind of a breakdown by department, just so that you can see the number of grants that we have submitted, been awarded, and are pending. And these don't include then all of the vetting. So we probably vet over 100 different grants that ultimately we don't apply for various reasons. They either don't align with city priorities, the red tape or the strings are going to be too onerous for what we want or what we'd get, those types of things. So this is strictly just once we've gone through that process and decided, yeah, we want to move forward. And you can see we're working with everybody. There's also been a number of opportunities where we can work with multiple departments so that we are really collaborating internally for the best use of the funds. If you're curious what the breakdown of where the grants are coming from, so almost half are federal, about 42% were state, and then almost 9% were other. Other means like foundations for the most part. And just to give you a little idea of what we were awarded, various things, so things like the downtown railroad safety, that's kind of looking at that quiet zone idea for downtown. Sewer improvements, the water booster station. For the EMS, we got equipment as well as training. Some brownfields cleanup at straight maintenance, as well as some energy efficiency upgrades for them. I mentioned, PD and police and others do their own grants, and so here's a snapshot of what they've gotten, which is over $18 million. The bulk of that is our airport with the terminal expansion and the new water reclamation facility improvements. But then you can also see the police department, our CDBG program, our RSVP program, fire department, historical preservation, mosquito spraying for our parks, and some library services. And I mentioned we have a number pending, 22 million in fact, and that, this is kind of a breakdown, but it's everything from infrastructure like Skyline Drive improvements, even infrastructure like at our solid waste for recycling, bridge improvements. We've got some electronic permitting software and things that we're hoping to get for community development, park renovations that hopefully we're going to hear by the end of this month, wildfire mitigation, all kinds of things. Now, just to share a little bit about how grants work in case some people may not understand, I mentioned, about half of what we are applying for are federal grants. I wanted to give a little bit of a snapshot of where our federal funding is currently coming from. The thing is, when you're awarded a grant, It's not like they send you that check right away. It's a reimbursement basis. We do the work, and then we submit for reimbursement to get paid for that work. Generally, it's quarterly reimbursement, sometimes monthly if it's a bigger project. So I mentioned, we're getting all these grants, but we don't get the actual dollars in our budget right away. So for a federal snapshot of what the actual money coming to the city is, in 2023, it was about 26 million. We're anticipating about 35 million or possibly even more for 2024 and 2025. Again, the bulk of that is that airport terminal expansion, and the water rec facility is really what's bumping that up. And a little bit of the grants division, So I also did a breakdown of the federal departments that we are receiving funding from. As you can see, it is a number of them: HUD, Agriculture, Interior, Justice, Transportation, Energy, EPA, the Corporation for National and Community Service, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, and the Treasury. So where are we going? So for the next year, we will always look at where there are opportunities to support our city priorities. We do see probably a shift a little bit with the new administration and what federal grants might be available. There may not be quite as many as in previous years, but we also think that there's going to be some opportunities with private foundations and philanthropy and possible unique collaborations where we can work with community partners to access other resources to support the work that we're all wanting. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions? Comments? Thank you for what you and your staff are doing, your group. I think that looks great. So, got a motion by Bieberdorf to acknowledge and a second by Evans. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Go to Bieberdorf, Councilman Bieberdorf.
Motion to reconsider number 6. If I get a second, I'd like to have Daniel speak to that one. If I get a second, I'd have Daniel jump in and explain.
Okay, there's been a motion by Bieberdorf and a second by Maher to reconsider item number 6. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. I guess we'll go to Director Ainsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilor. My apologies for this, but we did want to make sure that the council was fully aware of this item, and the original intent was that this item would be placed not on the consent. So we just want to make sure that there's a little bit of a discussion so the council's aware of this. So this is in regards to a newer apartment complex, a 42-unit complex that has recently been completed, the Radiant, as part of the capital stack that allowed this low and moderate income housing project to proceed. They did receive nearly $600,000 from our CDBG program. It was $597,000. As part of that, there were covenants that were placed that 30 of the 42 units would have to meet low and moderate income housing requirements that are adopted by the city for the city's CDBG program. When our CDBG program manager, my apologies, when she conducted her first annual monitoring of the project, she did find that there were not 30 units that were compliant with the requirements. Essentially, the rents that were being charged to 8 of the 30 units were too high. And so she brought that up as an item that needed to be addressed. Long term, the Common Bond, the owners of the apartment complex, do not believe that they will be able to maintain that level of rent for all 30 units. And so they have requested that the total number of units that would be required to meet that obligation would be reduced from 30 units to 22. And so that's what this item is a an amendment to their agreement with the city that would reduce the number of units that would be that would meet the city's CDBG formula for affordable housing from 30 units to 22.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Go to Councilman Evans.
To me, it's of some concern that we are changing the rules in the middle of a thing, I guess. I'm curious why all of a sudden what they thought was going to happen did not happen, and why we should be obligated in any way to change what we had agreed to, rather than they change what they're charging. That is of some concern to people observing this, I'm sure. I don't know, is this a habit of this group across Minnesota and Wisconsin, wherever they're, very prominent property holders? I'm just curious why we should be expected to adjust our agreement. I don't know. It just kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Could you maybe expand upon that a little bit? I mean, I know they may not be able to, but then why did they agree to this, and why did we agree to it in the first place? Thanks.
Director Ainsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think those are all very, very relevant questions. And I would ask our Michelle, our CDBG manager, to correct me if anything I'm saying is inaccurate. But essentially, when the original applications were received for this project, that the 30 units were included in there, as well as at the city's CDBG affordable income levels. And what we have heard from the property owner is that the requirement of maintaining affordability at, I think it's 33% of the tenant's income, is not something that they are used to, and something that they would find would be challenging in the long term. And so that's why they are making the request to reduce that number. But again, that was an item that was included at the start of this.
Okay, can I go to Michelle? Do you have something to add, Michelle, our CDBG manager?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Director Ainsley. I had wanted to make two very minor points of clarification. That was very much the history of this. One point of clarification is during the application cycle, we do require that every specific project has at minimum 51% of CDBG compliant units. However, programmatic wide, we have to meet the threshold of 70%. So therefore, not every single project can be at the bare minimum. Originally, when we were negotiating contracts, the 22 units was listed, and per their request, they felt that they could meet a higher threshold of 30 units. And therefore, when the second round of funding was brought forward for your approval, it was already indicated that 30 units would be CDBG compliant for the additional funding. And then secondly, just a very small point of clarification, we want to ensure that folks are paying no more than 30% of their income on rent plus utilities.
So again, then I guess the next question is, if we don't do this, what happens?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In our role, we would continue to do the monitoring, and we would remind them that they are not in compliance. If they have no other way to be in compliance, then I believe we would be working even more with the attorney's office on what we already have been, to see what our other remedies are, that they would not be in compliance with their agreements with the city.
Go to Director Fisher, Community Development.
This property is also in a planned development. When they came in with their project proposal, they requested exceptions to parking and a couple other design features. And in consideration of the number of units that would be at a 30% AMI, the Planning Commission and staff were very supportive of reducing those elements. So if this is approved to allow it to be reduced to 22 units, we may have to go back and do a major amendment to that plan development as well.
Okay, go back to Bill Evans.
And I don't know how many of you guys have actually toured that property. I think, Kevin, you were there the day. They're really beautiful units. And as I walked through there, I thought, how in the world is this working? You know, and I'm not even a real estate guy. You know, I play the saxophone. But to me, it made no sense how that could be offered at that price. So I'm just wondering if we're maybe entering into some things that are on the outset just a bit sketchy. That's what is sitting badly with me right now. I know I don't do that in my personal life, where the bank takes back the property. So there you go. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Okay, and item number 6, anything else from the council or the committee? Can I get a motion? Motion by Bieberdorf to approve. Second by Maher. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. I think that brings us to the end of business today. Am I correct that next week's council meeting is moved from Monday to Tuesday because of the holiday? So that week, Tuesday, February 18th. Take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Bieberdorf and a second by Evans to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Amounts to a scam as far as I'm concerned. They can't get any lower than 22. This is the reason people get mad at us. And I've heard